Alright, so Alleles continued. We just looked at dominant and recessive. So we said dominant was represented by a capital letter, and recessive was represented by a lowercase letter. Now, you only need to have one capital letter for the characteristic to be dominant. Now, because your traits, you get half from mom and half from dad, whenever you have a trait, it's always going to be represented with two letters together. So looking back at that example that I just gave previously, we said for hair color, we said that black was dominant because it's capital B, and we said small b represented blonde. So that's in the lower case. Now it says here you only need one capital letter to be dominant. So for example, if you got two big B's, because remember again you get half of it from mom and you get the half from dad, that would be, you would get black hair color because you only need one capital letter. In this example, in the second example here, if you have capital B, let's say you got that from mom, and if you got a lowercase b, combined big B, little b, you would still end up having black hair color because again, like you said, you only need one capital letter to show dominance. Now this isn't the same for recessive genes. For recessive, because recessive is the lowercase letter, you need to have two small letters or two lowercase letters to show recessive. So again, because you get half from mom and half from dad, it's always represented with two letters. So for example, if you get lowercase b from mom and if you get lowercase b from dad, two small b's together will give you blonde. The only way to get recessive is you have to have two small letters. But for dominant, you only need to have one. So you can have two possibles. You can have big B, or big B, little b. Those would still show dominant. Again, this is just an example using these letters. You can have any letter. You could, if you wanted to use a, if you wanted to use C, D, F, whichever. It's just easier with the hair color there. Now, these are some terms you may have seen. Now, like we said, because you get half from mom and half from dad, you're always going to have two letters representing that gene. Now, for example, if you have two capital B's, big B, they are the same capital letters. So this is known as homozygous. This trait of black hair is known as homozygous dominant. Okay, we say homozygous because the word, like if someone's a homosexual, they like someone of the same sex. So homozygous means it's the same. And this is dominant because, like we said previously, you only need one capital letter to represent dominant. So this, big B, homozygous because they're both the same, and it's dominant because they're capital letters. Now if you have small b, again it's the same. They're the lowercase letters, so again it's homozygous, but because you have two small b's, it's going to be recessive. So homozygous recessive because we have two of the same lowercase letters, and they're lowercase, so we know lowercase is recessive. Now when you have the two mixed together, if you have big B and little b, they're not the same, so that's not homozygous, it's heterozygous. Again, think if someone's heterosexual, they're like someone of the opposite sex, so it's not the same. And like we said, you only need one capital letter for dominant, so this combination of big B, little b would be heterozygous dominant. Again, you could change these letters. If this was capital A, let's say that was the trait for eye color, again it would still be homozygous dominant. So looking at the patterns again, if it's the same type of letter, capital or lowercase, it's known as homozygous. Then you have to look because this is at least one capital, it's dominant, and this two lowercase, it's recessive. For this one, they aren't the same, so it's heterozygous, and because you only need one capital letter, it's known as dominant. So if you see these words coming up, homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive, heterozygous dominant, again I've underlined and color coded it so it hopefully makes sense there. Same, homozygous. Not the same, heterozygous. At least one capital letter, dominant, two lowercase letters, recessive.